Chapter 2. Taking some time away from the game. Withdrawing from games. After becoming world champion, I went on to take other championship titles in numerous Japanese tournaments. People showered me with praise, calling me things like Gamer of the Decade, the most dominant fighting gamer in the world, the god of fighting games even. None of that motivated me, however. The real reason I kept working so hard to develop my gaming and myself was a belief that I could change people's perception of games and in turn, of me. Part of me expected my efforts to be appreciated. Fighting games are essentially about two individuals competing, and I expected great discovery as a result of mastering the required skills. Realistically, I knew that I couldn't accomplish anything through gaming alone, just as everyone around me had always said. At the time, pro gaming wasn't yet considered a profession, and no matter how many tournaments I won, I wasn't making any real contribution to society. Even so, I remained focused on defeating the opponents I faced each day, with no greater purpose in mind. Still, it seemed that working this hard in a competitive field might spark something. Maybe more people would notice my skill with games, even if it was far-fetched to think that society would fully acknowledge my effort or worth based solely on that. Part of me thought that if I just kept winning, someone, somewhere would praise me and it'd change my life. After all, understanding people is an essential gaming skill, and no one could do what I had done with a one-minded, dimensional strategy alone. I also wanted to change the way others viewed games. I hoped that they'd see someone like me putting in the work, approaching gaming as a serious venture, and think maybe gaming was worthy of respect. Of course, I had no aspirations of gaming ever being held in the same regard as baseball or soccer, but there was no reason it couldn't have more of a major presence. So I felt the need to keep growing, in anticipation of the day when games finally got the respect they deserved. I had to play to impress. I simulated interviews in my head all the time. Someday, someone would ask me, "Daigo, what are you thinking when you play games?" I had to be prepared to respond, telling the interviewer the resolve with which I approached games and my unrivaled passion. But nothing changed, and as the years went by, I found it increasingly difficult to approach games with the same fervor as I once had. I didn't see any room for further growth. Besides, no one would listen to me, given my current lower levels of effort, though I'm sure that if anyone had listened, they'd have been impressed that a gamer thinks the way I do. I wasn't growing. I didn't want anyone to see me like that, and more importantly, I couldn't let myself go on like that. I'd given up on ever being able to teach anyone anything through gaming. That was the point when I decided to hang it up. To me, games weren't something you play for fun. If I couldn't work any harder at competitive gaming, I felt like I'd lose the will to live. It was that important to me. Walking away from games was the only choice. Choosing Mahjong. In the fall of 2004, when I left games behind, I was 23. I worried what I would do next, not because I didn't know how I'd pay the bills, but because I felt like I had to find something to fill the void that games had left behind. Sports were out. School was too. I wanted something else competitive, preferably something where I got to play against an opponent. That competition was what made games so interesting and profound to me. I narrowed it down to two choices, Mahjong or billiards. I was going to approach one or the other as seriously and as with as much passion as I had with fighting games. I had learned the rules of Mahjong when I was 18 and enjoyed it, and I occasionally playing with other gamers from the arcades. Billiards, on the other hand, was a total unknown. It had been popular for a while and pro billiards was kind of a thing in Japan, but some digging around suggested that scene was pretty small. So Mahjong it was. With Mahjong, I could work on improving my game while working at a Mahjong parlor. I needed to make a living, so I figured getting paid to learn would be the most efficient way. Going off an ad in Kendai Mahjong, a popular Mahjong manga mag, I chose a place in Ikebukuro that the pro played at. At the time, I had the confidence to throw myself into anything if I had the inclination. Part-timers at the parlor had one of two jobs, reception or playing as a stand-in. Reception workers served drinks, cooked simple dishes, and cleaned. Stand-ins played at tables that didn't have enough players or filled in to play someone's tiles if they had to go to the bathroom. At the parlor I worked at, the part-timers more or less stuck with one job or the other, with those best at playing allowed to be stand-ins. Since my goal was improving my game, that's the position I requested. I studied Mahjong every day while working 12-hour shifts at the Mahjong parlor. I left home in the morning and played all day while working, maybe 9 or 10 hours. After returning home, I'd set up the tiles on my table and study Mahjong alone for an hour or so. I was always tired at the end of the day, so that was about all the energy I could muster. Before I knew it, Mahjong had replaced gaming as my addiction. Training at Mahjong. Just as with video games, at first I couldn't win at Mahjong. It was nothing like what I originally thought it would be. At first, I had figured that since Mahjong and fighting games were both a form of player versus player competition, many of the skills I developed would transfer directly. While there was some overlap, my instincts and observational skills from gaming were surprisingly ineffective, so I had a hard time at first. In fighting games, snap decisions and quick action are the most vital skills. There's no time to think about what your opponent is going to do next. Thought and action must be nearly simultaneous. If your read is off, you have to grasp the difference between you and your opponent's intuitions and instantly adjust. If the opponent does something unexpected, you can make assumptions on what they're thinking. The same mental and behavioral process also applies to everyday interactions with people. In Mahjong, however, you have significantly less control. It's a 4-player game, and the tiles you're dealt limit your play. Often you can see what's going on, but can't do anything about it. It took time for me to accept the competitive differences between video games and Mahjong. It was humbling. Staying on top in competitive gaming made me confident that I could master it alone, but that wasn't the case. It took me a while to abandon my preconceptions, but after I did, I finally started winning. After a year of serious play, I was slightly stronger than the average person. Looking back on it now, my initial approach to the game was too optimistic. I played recklessly, pushing forward through nothing more than pure will. Naturally, I went through slumps and hit walls. I was winning at a decent rate, but there were certain players I couldn't beat, no matter what I tried. That's when I decided to change my approach. There was a regular who was undeniably stronger than me at Mahjong. Let's call him Tanaka. I decided to stick to him and absorb what I could. With his permission, I'd watch him anytime I wasn't busy with other customers. This was partly to keep up appearances. I wanted him to know how seriously I took this and didn't want him to see me looking away. Standing there just watching Tanaka play for up to 10 hours straight was rough. My vision blurred, and my shoulders and legs got stiff. Most of my fellow part-timers will return to work after watching the good players for just 10 minutes, muttering to themselves how they didn't get it. I didn't either. Clearly these guys were playing at a level beyond us, yet I figured my coworkers weren't really trying to watch, that they weren't serious enough about the game. Going back to work was easier. I stuck with it because I wanted to earn Tanaka's respect for my effort and talent. I didn't care what the other players thought of me, but I did care what he thought. His approval would give me confidence and make me happy, so I worked for it. The approval of my parents and friends was important on a personal level, but there were only a handful of people whose opinions I cared about as a player. Tanaka was one of them. After a few months of this, I reached a point where I could mimic Tanaka's playing style. I wasn't going to beat him with that alone though. I continued copying his style for another half year. Still, no results. I could play like Tanaka, but I couldn't win like he did. Before I knew it, it had been 2 years since I started playing. I began to think that maybe I just wasn't cut out for Mahjong. I was going to the parlor for 12 hours a day, living and breathing only Mahjong, but I couldn't produce the results I was looking for. 2 years may not sound like such a long time, but the concentrated effort I was making made it seem like a never-ending task with no end in sight. I was starting to feel like this might be the end, but I decided I had one last push in me. I'd buckle down just a little more, and if that didn't do it, I'd quit. Mastering Mahjong. Sensing it was my last chance, I reapplied myself, approaching things from a different perspective. Suddenly, I started beating players I couldn't beat before. I even got to the point where I could best Tanaka himself. I didn't let it show, but my first win against him was an emotional moment. Everything started coming together. I'd come up with a few tweaks to my play that were wildly successful. Naturally, some of it was just a cumulative result of hard work, but my confidence grew as my own strategy started paying off. In some cases, luck was on my side, but gradually I began to see how to court the luck by playing the odds. From that point on, I rarely lost. Not to brag, but I had the opportunity to play a few pro mahjong players and never felt they were insurmountably better than me. By no means have I played all the pros or figured out everything there is to know about the game, but I'd say I'd probably climbed to at least within sight of the top echelon. In the 3 years since starting mahjong, I'd tilled and sown my field, watching the crop bear fruit, and it finally reached the harvesting stage. I felt like I could be on the winning side of things from there on out. In every parlor I played at, people would be surprised that someone my age was so good. A parlor owner in Okubo commented that in all his decades of watching mahjong, I was for sure among the top 5 players he'd seen, despite his having played against many pros. I didn't take that at face value, but it at least signaled that I was pretty good. I learned to trust my own theories and play with confidence. When I first started out, I'd second-guess myself out of making risky plays, but I had since learned to reason through with certainty which plays were right and why. When I took risks, it was because the risky move was the right one. I now had the confidence to make those plays, knowing that the risk is an integral part of the game. Feeling more comfortable with my playstyle, I became more assertive and my concentration levels increased. In mahjong, the aggressor usually wins. Luck is part of the game, but the truly strong players are those who can be overbearing and even a bit reckless in following their instincts. Most importantly, such players know exactly when to hold off and when to strike. Only those who feel comfortable toying with defeat figure out how to pull off wins. I still get comments on how strong I am when I go to mahjong parlors. I discard my tiles decisively and faster than anyone, and that alone appears to have an impact. Not that I do it on purpose, it's just how I've always played. It must come naturally from my gamer instincts. Earning respect. It felt better to have my skill at mahjong acknowledged by Tanaka than it did to reach the top levels of the game. Tanaka was a true master, far stronger than the average pro. Still, while I never understood why, he was often reluctant to play. As a result, his play never got any better or worse. The way he tells it, this lack of progression had killed his ambition to further improve. He encouraged me to play though, sensing that I really liked the game. He often told me things like that, and he never tried to show off his strengths. Even so, his play was the real deal. When I was trying to copy his style, there were times when I nearly gave up because he just simply couldn't lose. In all forms of competition, fighting games included, he is the first and the last to make me feel that. One day, we went out drinking and he casually praised my play, saying that he'd been watching my progress. You weren't much in the beginning, he said, but you really showed what a gaming world champion is made of. I was ecstatic, filled with this indescribable sense of accomplishment. I finally felt like I had made it in mahjong. Thanks to mahjong, my confidence ballooned. My fighting game skills may not have translated well, but my approach of no-holds-barred effort, the way I'd been doing things since I was young, was validated. Knowing that was a huge leap forward for me. What I learned. I reached top-level mahjong play in 3 years by shadowing a top player. Watching Tanaka game after game was like a series of practice tests. I was watching my answers against his to see where our thoughts agreed and evaluating my choices with each round. This gave me the time to seriously weigh strategies. Sometimes Tanaka would play as I'd expect, and other times he showed me options I hadn't considered. I asked questions when I couldn't read his intentions, giving my best to guess and confirm if I was following along. Over the course of shadowing better players, you fashion their technique into your own. It isn't until you finally approach their level that you can start adding your own flavor. Keeping up with Tanaka took everything I had. There was no room for my own touch. It wasn't until half a year later when I could start adapting my own playstyle and start winning more. Once you reach a certain level, you won't mature further through shadowing alone. The player you're shadowing will see right through all your thoughts and moves. If you want to master something, start by fully studying the basics for at least 2 or 3 years. Learn the theory behind the game and how to reason your way through moves, rather than winging it. Build your base before seeking out different ways to play, and then explore options for developing your technique. Premature attempts at creating a unique approach, or just practicing while you're still not that good, will end up with you bumping into a low ceiling. Mastering the basic theory of a game will only take you to the limits of conventional strength. To give a racing example, you need to be bold, driving with just enough speed that your tires graze the grass at the edge of the course. Not play it safe and stay within the lines. Follow your instincts. If you've plateaued at just good, it's probably a confidence issue. You're afraid to trust your own judgment. You are relying on theory to decide your moves. As a result, you can't produce the strength to overwhelm your opponent. It takes courage to break out of your shell. Once you're able to build upon the foundations, your wins will increase. Once your labor starts to bear fruit, a power all your own will emerge. Beyond conventional strength. I first sensed that you have to think outside the box to attain greatness in competitive gaming, and my experiences with Mahjong confirmed my suspicions. I think a lot about the way I play games. If I'd stuck to conventional gameplay, it wouldn't have been me playing. Anyone could have done it. I prefer to follow my own judgment when I play. If you too can face things with that kind of resolve, you'll see that the possibilities outweigh the benefits of staying within the lines. Have faith in your instincts and act upon them. Sticking to conventions doesn't require any special individual effort. It's just being pragmatic. Almost like you're giving up on chasing your dreams and working a job instead. Say you get a feeling during a match about the character your opponent just picked. That feeling is yours. You're feeling it precisely because you put in the work, and your experience is telling you something. It'd be a waste for you not to integrate that instinct into your play. Sure, you can fail by acting on your instincts, but you'll feel alive. So I push the envelope a bit to project my thoughts into action on screen. In Mahjong, it's like following logic by making a play that just feels right. Or in business, like having faith in a new product. You don't know what it'll sell, but your intuition tells you to put it out there anyway. You're putting your neck out and bearing the risk for what you believe in. In my younger years, there was a time when I was hung up on winning every game. If you dwell too much on wins, your scope narrows and you stop having good ideas. It gives you tunnel vision. You'll convince yourself that what you're doing is the only way forward, restricting your options. Being overly fixated on winning leads to nothing but sticking to conventional ways. At this point, I don't worry about outcomes. Sticking with what works is a natural thing, but become overly fixated on conventional theory and you lose sight of your ultimate purpose. You'll start to doubt yourself, and that will show in your play. Focus only on the outcome and you'll think of conventional thoughts, always searching for a more efficient, safer strategy. You'll wind up justifying your own logic. We play it safe because of desires to avoid failure, to make a name for ourselves, or to receive praise. These desires will consume your being. In my teenage years, I played on instinct alone. I got honed plenty as a result, but that's life. With age, however, I became interested in the theory behind games and comprised my ideals, settling on a more cunning style of play backed by theory and executed with precision. At this point, I was reading a ton of books on topics like thinking and strategy. But the more I read the thoughts and the more that I thought about it, the more I felt that studying more will only make your strategy and reasoning the same as everyone else's. Reading gradually felt less and less useful, so I turned to more important things. I now try to play like I did when I was younger, trusting my intuition, as long as it's nothing exceptionally disastrous. I immediately apply what I've learned in play. I stop worrying about outcomes, instead find joy in my own daily advances, and doing so makes me feel like I did back in the day. I look for tricks that only I can pull off, and I try to act in a way that I think is the right way. Reverting my game to the pure form of my youth has made me win even more. Quantitatively speaking, my winning percentage is probably up 10%, which is huge in competitive gaming. All that time I spent on theory and reasoning still has its meaning, and that the knowledge I gained is available when I need it. The important thing, however, is how I use it, and the frame of mind I'm in when I'm doing so. Attaining knowledge, honing skills, and accruing experience will all make you a more complete player. However, if you let a short-sighted focus on outcomes distort your mindset and dictate the game, you won't dazzle the public. What I'm after now is what really moves people, the pure game, fueled by instinct. Regrets. Despite every intention of dedicating my life to Mahjong at the time, I quit after 3 years. I had poured all the energy left over from when I had reluctantly quit games into Mahjong. I didn't even mind how it had cut into my private time. I had committed to my hopes, my dreams, my time, my everything. But Mahjong failed to live up to my expectations. I was overjoyed by my achievements and proud to have earned a spot at the table with the elite. But even so, a premonition hit me. Everything that had turned me from gaming would be true of Mahjong as well. If I kept playing Mahjong like this, I'd repeat my experience with games. I worried that the longer I kept at it, the more hopeless I'd be when I quit. It wasn't supposed to end up like this, especially 3 years into my efforts. Why hadn't I realized it earlier? If I became as disillusioned with Mahjong as I had with games, I'd never recover. So I gave up without even trying to qualify for the Pro League. Everyone was shocked. It seemed so passionate. I'd seemed so passionate about it all. What had happened? I didn't care. Nothing mattered anymore. First games, now Mahjong, and 26 years of living with nothing to show for it. For the first time in my life, I sincerely regretted not taking school seriously when I had the chance. Deplorably, part of me even blamed my father for telling me I didn't have to study and encouraging me to find something I really liked. I laughed at myself for swallowing the line about doing what I wanted. Look where that had gotten me. Why couldn't I have been more critical? If only Dad had given me more guidance, maybe I wouldn't have wound up in such a miserable state. If only he taught me about the ways of life. If only I had listened and picked a better life. My thoughts were pathetic, and they were a bundle of what if and if onlys. I never held a real grudge against my father. I just wanted someone else to blame for never having studied and now having no prospects. I felt like I had let all of my opportunities pass me by. I put everything into gaming since childhood. It was a fun life. It had taught me many lessons I couldn't have learned any other way. But by losing all hope from Mahjong, it had marked an all-time low for my self-confidence. I was also apprehensive of the future. I had my health and a dry roof over my head, so I knew I'd survive. But what kind of life would it be? The future I had pictured and hoped for since childhood, a rewarding life chasing my passion, seemed to be slipping away. This was the lowest point in my life. On many occasions, others had voiced their disdain for my way of life, but that had never bothered me. I'd remained satisfied with my life and how it was progressing. But now, I felt like I had taken a wrong turn. At first, I regretted abandoning Mahjong, but the more I thought about it, I couldn't imagine sticking with it. Another problem with Mahjong is that in Japan it had a reputation as a game for gamblers and gangsters. I hated that because I feared it would cause social awkwardness for my family. My parents and family have always been an important part of my life. You might be surprised to hear that I never went through a rebellious phase as a teen. My parents will back me up on this. I guess going off the arcades was a form of rebellion in a sense, but it's not like my parents opposed. They always let me do as I wished, so I never had any reason to talk back or real anger to take out on them. I still live with my parents and get along great with both them and my sister. By quitting Mahjong, I once again had plenty of opportunity to think about my parents. This helped me see where my next step should be. Working in nursing care. I was despondent after quitting both games and Mahjong, but I wasn't ready to give up on life just yet. I had to look for something new to start. My thoughts turned to my parents' work at the hospital. Dad was still in administration, and Mom was still a nurse. I started to seriously consider elder care as an option. Floating the idea by my parents one day, Dad managed to maintain his composure. Sure, that might work, he said. While they never actually said so, I'm sure my parents had always wanted more from their son. I never got into trouble, but surely they wished I would pick a more wholesome career and better contribute to society. So when I started talking about elder care, I'm sure they were elated. It was connected to their work, so they could even offer advice as needed. They probably doubted I'd stick with it, but they were supportive and encouraged me to give it a shot. I was known for my impetuous decisions, and this was no exception. My parents always forgave me for my impulsiveness. Elder care is by no means an easy job, and it's more physically demanding than you might expect. No matter how you do it, repeatedly moving people between bed and wheelchair takes its toll on your back. Accordingly, most caregivers are solidly built. I had some concerns about the physical aspects, but decided to give it a go. I wasn't exactly enthusiastic in my choice of elder care. It was at an all-time low in terms of willpower, and I didn't have the energy to really apply myself to anything. I chose the profession simply because I could ask my parents questions if needed and didn't require any experience to get started. I was taking the easy path. I'm sure the younger me would have had a good laugh, but my spirit was broken. The kid that refused to let go of the monkey bars at the playground had finally dropped. I gave up both games and mahjong. Maybe I just picked the wrong pursuits, but I certainly didn't have much to show in my efforts. Perhaps I was just running away from my issues, but I had convinced myself that helping people and working with others would inject some hope into my life. When I started out, I imagined a workplace full of friendly people, just a thing for a weary soul. Nursing isn't like the standard business position. There are no quotas to fill, no deadlines to beat. People's lives are on the line, so it's not a forgiving job, but it's certainly not competitive and no one is chasing after profits. I learned new things every day and was sore every night. I didn't have time to ponder life's questions. Each day zipped by too fast. The hard, honest work healed my soul, and with that came budding ambition. I started looking for ways to advance, wondering what kind of qualifications I could get in elder care. I hated being forced to study in school, but I wasn't opposed to the idea of learning something I had picked for myself. Entry-level elder care didn't require any special qualifications, but there were a number of caregiver qualifications to pursue. I decided to try something, try to take some courses to study up and see about tests. Life without competition. The nursing home I worked for divided up the patients by floor based on severity of their condition. I worked on the 3rd floor with the patients in the most severe states. A full third of the patients there had lost the ability to communicate. The others were in various stages of dementia. Some would forget conversations we had the previous day, and others couldn't even remember 5 minutes back. Maybe 1 in 5 were mobile, but the rest could only walk with assistive equipment or a hand from us. I didn't find the job itself to be difficult. Tending to other people's needs and cleaning bedpans didn't bother me so much. Sure, I was physically tired, but it was a good kind of tired that stopped short of exhaustion. The work was rewarding and fun. Working as a caregiver got me thinking about many things. Feeling appreciated by others was new to me, and I appreciated all the thank yous. Working a job that kept me moving naturally lifted my spirits. I'd be tired at the end of the day, but when I got home and cracked open a beer, I felt a sense of accomplishment. With no games and a non-competitive job, all my pent-up tension melted away. Incidentally, I'm told that I would grind my teeth every night when I was playing mahjong. I must have tensed up and stressed when I was hard and intensely competing. I felt as if I'd lose if I relaxed. Nursing isn't a stress-free job, but it's nothing like esports and mahjong. All I had ever known was competition, but here I had hung it all up and life still went on. I thought I needed it to survive, but I now realized that wasn't the case. Little by little, I was changing. Reuniting with games. I continued working at the nursing home for 1.5 years, never once considering a return to games. So this is normal life, I thought. With no chances to showcase my talent, I settled into my position at work and listened to those around me. In competitive gaming, ability was everything. It was all about standing apart and proving your strength. With no such opportunities in elder care, my everyday life was uneventful, but I didn't feel the need to play games. Then one day, after nearly 3 years away, I went to an arcade. Street Fighter 4 had just come out, and a friend insisted I come check it out. He knew that I had given up on competitive gaming, and that I never played games just for fun, but this was the new Street Fighter we were talking about. How could I turn that down? At first I wasn't interested, but who would refuse when you put it like that? Several coincidences brought me back into the gaming fold, but the biggest was Street Fighter 4, the first number released in the series in almost 9 years. The time I distanced myself from games was a lull period for fighting games. Many fans were worried that the genre was dead. The release of Street Fighter 4 triggered its revival. As rusty as I was, I played surprisingly well. It was exciting and satisfying. I felt what it was that I was missing from my life without competition. Elder care wasn't giving me that outlet, and I never felt truly needed at work. I didn't hate the job, but I felt my self-confidence slipping. I started looking for spare time to spend at the arcade. It was just like old times. All the elite players came out at night, so that's when I started haunting the arcades. Luckily, caregiver schedules are flexible. Before I quit gaming, I thought I'd never play as just a hobby. It was all or nothing. But after taking a break for a while, I started to think that as long as I was having fun, treating it as a hobby was just fine. Showdown in Shinjuku. One day, A group of the strongest players came to my regular arcade in Shinjuku. They were a motley collection of the old guard who had been playing since forever, along with some up-and-comers. As the crowd slowly built around me, I defeated my challengers one after the other. I didn't consider it a big deal at the time, but by the end I managed to defeat at least 10 elite players. That victory had a significant effect on how I felt about things. After the fact, I heard that word was out that I was back in the arcades and that they had assembled just to face me. For someone who had taken almost 3 years off to win against all of them was something special indeed. My display caused an uproar. Some even thought I was lying about having quit games. I realized that the effort I had put into all this since I was a kid was something exponential. I had a gift for winning. I also remembered my characteristic persistence, never letting go of the bars first. Tasting that feeling again after so long was intoxicating. I was fully reborn as a fighting game player. I was ready to take on the scene once again. Maybe I'd even enter another tournament. Umehuarez is back. Having rediscovered myself, I set out for a fresh start with games. I played between shifts at the nursing home, shocking people at the arcades and even appearing in a tournament or two. I felt like that was enough for me to enjoy my life. I'm sure that if the timing had been just a little earlier, I wouldn't have felt the same. I wouldn't have narrowed the rift between games and me. Games would have remained inextricably linked with all those bitter memories. But now I was back on the competitive stage in 2009, the year after the Japanese release of Street Fighter IV. Capcom held a Japanese national tournament, and I entered for the first time in a while. Everyone was excited to hear that Umehuarez was back. The gaming magazine Arcadia ran a feature on me, even making a bonus DVD compiling the story of my comeback. I was honored that they'd go through such a production for me. Not many keyed into how I had changed, but those I had been close with since before had noticed. I'm sure my attitude, speech, and demeanor all had softened. I didn't exactly make a big splash in my comeback at the Japanese SF4 national tournament, but I made enough of a wave to score an invite to a special exhibition match at the GameStop Street Fighter IV US National Tournament Finals in San Francisco in April of 2009. I had won several American tournaments in the past and had been involved in a few well-known matches, so they must have heard a word of my comeback and wanted to capitalize. In the US too, I got plenty of questions about why I'd left gaming. Some thought I must have gotten married or something. And some even said I must have died. Americans have such imaginations. Apparently the real answer, that I just quit, seemed impossible. In any case, the exhibition match is what led to my becoming a professional fighting game player. This chapter had so many interesting discussions that I barely know where to start. Daigo's talk about kind of losing his passion and feeling lost, I can really relate to that. I know that there have absolutely been times, especially a couple of years ago, where I had kind of started my job and it was a full-time gig. I'm still in the job actually, and this was really the first time that I had started working about a typical 40-50 hour week, you know, the whole grown man thing. You come in 8 to 5 and the rest of your evening yours, and you go to sleep and you rinse and repeat. And the money was nice, but after a while I started to notice that I got no time. I felt that everything had been going to just this job, and it was slowly starting to wear me down. Like, I enjoyed playing video games and like engaging in other hobbies and stuff, and I felt like that this was just keeping me from it. I started to wonder if it was worth it, and hearing somebody like Daigo be as great as he is, or just somebody that's done so much, that suffered from the same kind of, I don't know, like rut or just indecision, it really makes you feel good. It makes you feel that, you know, that anything's possible, that he's human too, and if he's able to make it out of a situation like that, or if he still feels the struggle of the daily grind, then it's something that we all go through, and we can all find our way out of that rut. And I have to say, recently there's been a lot of personal changes in my life, and I'm thankful. It's been hard. I got a lot more responsibility than I ever have in my entire life, and sometimes it gets me because, like, between work and now kind of having a family and just people to come home to, like girlfriend, kids, that kind of stuff. It's a lot different than anything I imagined for myself. I easily expected myself to be like a 40-year-old man living alone in an apartment, just chilling with his games and being completely content. But that's not what life had in store for me, and I'm kind of going with the flow. I don't have as much time to stuff like video games and things like that anymore, but honestly, I think it's made me grow to appreciate it a lot more too. Because when I had too much time for it, it kind of felt like I was wasting my time and that I should be doing something more productive. But now, after having so much time dedicated to stuff like school, full-time job, family, just different hobbies, music, it's made me put things into perspective and realize that I got a lot to be appreciative of, and life is just something else, man. You never know what to expect. So definitely, I appreciate you guys sticking around. Let me know what you think of the chapter, the thing that stuck out most to you, and I'll see you in the next one. Love you guys.